So if you chugged one of those neon blue commercial sports drinks after your last workout, you probably thought you were hydrating, right?
Yeah, that's like the standard assumption.
Right. But biologically speaking, there is this very high probability that you didn't hydrate your exhausted cells at all.
Not even a little bit.
Exactly. Instead, you likely just flooded your system with, synthetic food dyes and this cheap lab-made compound called cyanocobalamin.
Oh, yeah, the cyanocobalamin, that's a rough one.
It really is because, it is literally synthetic vitamin B12 bound to a cyanide molecule.
Which is just wild to think about.
It's crazy. So while your muscles were just like screaming for biological raw materials to repair the micro tears you just caused, you actually forced your liver to work overtime to detoxify cyanide.
Yeah, it is a profound mismatch between what the marketing tells us our body needs and what the cellular machinery is actually demanding in that exact moment.
Oh.
We just routinely introduce these massive metabolic roadblocks at the exact moment the body requires, like metabolic freeways.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today we are targeting you, the listener, directly. Because whether you are an ultramarathoner or someone moving heavy iron in a garage gym, or even if you are just simply trying to recover from a highly demanding evening walk, your body is subjected to the exact same biological stress cycle.
Yeah, the mechanisms, they really don't change. Only the scale does.
Exactly. And understanding this specific physiological cycle is like the ultimate shortcut to maximizing the time you invest in moving your body.
It really is the key.
So today we are analyzing the optimal architecture of post-workout nutrition, and we're drawing from an incredibly dense, meticulously researched transcript by human biologist Gary Brecka from his show The Ultimate Human.
Right, and our specific mission here is to aggressively filter out the noise. I mean, there's an overwhelming amount of like gym bro science and legacy sports nutrition dogma out there.
Oh, so much noise.
And frankly, most of it just doesn't hold up to modern biochemical scrutiny. So we are going to extract the precise research-backed biological protocols your body actually requires to move from a state of physical trauma to a state of complete cellular repair and adaptation.
Okay. Let's unpack this, because the baseline reality we are dealing with here completely upends the psychological reward loop of exercise.
Oh, for sure.
We look in the mirror after a workout, we see the blood flow, the localized swelling, and we assume, hey, I just built a stronger organism. But the physiological reality is that the workout itself is purely a destructive event, right?
What's fascinating here is that the act of exercise is entirely catabolic. I mean, entirely.
Wow.
Yeah. You're not building a single fiber of muscle while you are under tension. The mechanical stress and the metabolic accumulation you experience, they are actively causing microtrauma to the sarcomeres.
And those are the basic contractile units of your muscle fibers, right?
Yeah, exactly. And during this period, your body is executing two highly destructive processes. First, you are rapidly oxidizing your stored glycogen.
Which are the glucose reserves packed into your muscle tissue and liver.
Right. And second, you are triggering an acute cascade of muscle protein breakdown.
So I want to move away from the standard tired metaphor of the body being a construction site post-workout, because honestly, it doesn't really capture the biochemical urgency of this state.
No, it really doesn't.
It's more like you've just created a massive osmotic vacuum inside your cells, like a smartphone with zero battery.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. The physical act of muscle contraction literally translocates these transport proteins, specifically GLUT4 receptors, from inside the cell to the cell membrane.
Right, they move to the surface.
Exactly. You've essentially thrown open the biochemical doors, draining all the cellular energy and causing structural fissures along the cell walls.
That is a much, much more accurate physiological model because you have fundamentally altered the environment of the cell.
Right.
You have triggered an acute inflammatory response. Macrophages and neutrophils are rushing to the site of the micro tears to, clean up the damaged cellular debris.
So you're basically in a transient state of biological emergency.
Exactly. The physiological adaptation,
Yeah.
the hypertrophy, the increased mitochondrial density, the actual measurable progress we are all seeking, that does not occur until you flip the switch.
From a catabolic state of breakdown to an anabolic state of synthesis.
Precisely.
Which introduces a rather unforgiving mandate for you, the listener, because you have just artificially induced a systemic trauma. And if you fail to introduce the precise biological precursors required to halt that inflammatory cascade,
And initiate ribosomal translation, yeah.
right, if you don't do that, you have essentially stressed your central nervous system and damaged your tissue for absolutely zero physiological return.
It's like you've initiated a massive demolition without signing a contract for the rebuild.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
I mean, the body will eventually stabilize, sure, but it will do so by scavenging resources from other systems.
Leaving you fatigued.
Fatigued, chronically inflamed, and ultimately no stronger than when you started.
Okay, so establishing that we have this open cellular vacuum desperately seeking raw materials, we must analyze the structural components required to fill it.
The bricks.
The biological bricks, yes. And for this repair, those bricks are amino acids. Our source material points directly to research from the National Institutes of Health, indicating a highly specific threshold.
Right, they recommend aiming for 20 to 40 grams of protein post-workout.
And that's specifically to maximize muscle protein synthesis.
Yeah, muscle protein synthesis, which is driven by the MTRR signaling pathway, is the primary biological mechanism for repairing those microtears.
And generating new, thicker muscle fibers.
Exactly. Hitting that 20 to 40 gram threshold ensures you have sufficient leucine.
And leucine is like the primary ketogenic amino acid, right? The molecular trigger.
Right, it's the trigger that actually turns on that MTO pathway.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. Because you walk through any commercial gym, and the prevailing wisdom is just, eat protein.
Just pound a protein shake, yeah.
Right. But the source transcript is borderline militant about making a distinction between protein and amino acids. Like the text draws a heavy line in the sand.
It does.
So why are we splitting biological hairs here? I mean, why not just ingest a massive steak immediately post-workout and let the body sort it out?
Well, it comes down to the enzymatic cost of digestion.
Cost, okay.
Yeah. Dietary protein, like your steak example, consists of complex, folded macromolecules. They are massive chains of amino acids bound together by peptide bonds.
So they're all locked up.
Right. When you consume whole food protein, your body cannot use it in that state. It actually has to initiate a highly energy-intensive process.
Oh, releasing hydrochloric acid in the stomach to denature the protein?
Exactly. Then secreting pepsin, and eventually relying on pancreatic proteases in the small intestine to cleave those massive chains down into individual free-form amino acids.
Wow. Which obviously takes time and significant cellular energy.
Two things. A body severely depleted of glycogen does not have an abundance.
Precisely.
The source material emphasizes that having an adequate reserve of the 8 essential amino acids already freely circulating in the bloodstream drastically expedites tissue repair.
Because they're already broken down.
Right. If you introduce free-form essential amino acids, you entirely bypass the gastrointestinal toll.
They just pass right through.
Yeah, they pass directly through the mucosal lining of the gut and into the bloodstream, arriving at the damaged muscle tissue in minutes rather than hours.
Which completely justifies the transcript's heavy emphasis on amino acid supplementation immediately post-workout. It specifically references products like Perfect Aminos.
Yeah, and the logic is structurally sound.
Because these are non-caloric, right? They don't require an insulin spike to be settled into the cells.
Exactly, and they don't break a metabolic fast if you happen to be training in a fasted state.
So you are essentially mainlining these structural repair components directly into the osmotic vacuum without taxing the digestive system at all.
It is the ultimate path of least resistance.
Huh.
You are capitalizing on that contraction-induced cellular permeability we discussed earlier.
Slipping the raw materials in while the biochemical doors are wide open.
Exactly.
However, the source doesn't solely rely on supplements. It does provide a stringent whole food protocol for those who prefer to, chew their nutrients.
Right, real food.
Yeah. We see the standard highly bioavailable animal sources: lean chicken, turkey, lean beef, and fatty fish like salmon.
And it also highlights whey and casein powders due to their rapid gastric emptying rates.
Yes, but I want to hyper-focus on a massive nuance in the text regarding dairy, because this blew my mind. The transcript doesn't just broadly recommend Greek yogurt.
No, it's very specific.
It mandates raw Greek yogurt, raw cottage cheese, and explicitly calls out dairy from A2 cows.
Yeah, this is an incredibly sophisticated recommendation that usually just gets lost in standard macronutrient counting.
So explain this. What is the deal with A1 versus A2 dairy?
Well, the distinction is genetic. Thousands of years ago, a genetic mutation occurred in European cattle herds,
Sure.
and it changed a single amino acid in the beta-casein protein chain, basically swapping a proline for a histidine.
Just one amino acid.
Just one.
Uh-huh.
But that mutated protein is what we now call A1 beta casein.
And the problem with that A1 mutation is how it behaves in the human digestive tract, right?
Exactly. When the human body digests A1 beta casein, that specific histidine mutation allows the protein to be cleaved in a way that releases a peptide called beta-casomorphin 7.
Wait, BCM7?
Yes, BCM7. And BCM7 is an exogenous opioid peptide that binds to receptors in the gut.
Wait, really? An opioid peptide?
Yeah, and it often triggers severe gastrointestinal inflammation, delayed transit time, and systemic immune responses.
Wow.
In fact, many people who believe they are lactose intolerant are actually just reacting to the BCM7 peptide released by A1 dairy.
That is wild. So A2 dairy lacks that mutation entirely.
Right, meaning it digests cleanly without releasing the inflammatory peptide.
And coupling that A2 requirement with the mandate for raw dairy adds like another whole layer of biological efficiency.
Oh, absolutely.
Because pasteurization relies on extreme heat to kill pathogens, but that heat also completely denatures the naturally occurring enzymes in the milk.
Like lactase.
Right, lactase, which our bodies need to properly break down the milk sugars. So by opting for raw A2 dairy, you are ingesting a protein source that literally comes with its own digestive enzymes intact.
Minimizing the metabolic burden on your gut. It is a self-digesting, highly bioavailable, non-inflammatory source of dense amino acids.
Amazing. Now, what about individuals utilizing plant-based sources?
Well, the text does acknowledge tofu, tempeh, and specific legumes.
But there's a caveat, isn't there?
Yeah, it explicitly caveats that plant-based proteins have lower PDCAA scores.
The protein digestibility corrected amino acid score.
Exactly. It basically means they are inferior to animal sources in terms of bioavailability. They often lack sufficient quantities of leucine to optimally trigger that mTOR pathway.
Unless you consume a massive amount.
Right, which can then lead to unwanted caloric and carbohydrate bloat.
Okay, so we have successfully flooded the system with highly bioavailable, low-inflammatory structural components. The amino acids are present.
The bricks are there.
The bricks are there, but ribosomal translation, the actual mechanical act of the cell taking those amino acids and synthesizing new muscle tissue, that is an incredibly energy-demanding process.
Huge energy demand.
We need to reignite the cellular power grid. We need complex carbohydrates.
Yeah, recharging that glycogen reservoir is paramount. The source actually cites some really compelling research from the Mayo Clinic illustrating this.
Right, showing that post-workout carbohydrate consumption is not strictly about rescuing the body from its current deficit.
No, it is the physiological prerequisite for your next training session. And furthermore, data from the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition demonstrates the synergistic effect of macro pairing.
Okay, explain that.
Well, ingesting carbohydrates alongside your amino acids triggers a controlled insulin release.
And insulin is key here, because insulin isn't just a fat storage hormone, which is, how it's often vilified in the diet world.
Not at all. It is a highly potent transport hormone.
It is the master anabolic hormone.
Exactly. Insulin effectively acts as the biological key that unlocks the cellular receptors, simultaneously driving both the glucose and the free-form amino acids from the bloodstream deep into the muscle tissue.
So they operate as an inextricably linked system.
They absolutely do.
But the source transcript takes a massive left turn here compared to legacy sports nutrition, because it demands an incredibly strict purity standard for these carbohydrates.
It is very strict.
It explicitly warns the listener to avoid anything enriched or fortified. It specifically targets synthetic folic acid sprayed onto, like, mass-market breads and pastas.
Yeah, and this is a critical distinction that affects cellular methylation.
Because the sports nutrition industry has operated for decades on the premise that a carb is a carb, right?
Oh, yeah. The idea that the body will simply metabolize a bowl of heavily processed enriched pasta exactly the same way it metabolizes a sweet potato.
Which is just not true.
The biological reality is vastly different. Folic acid is a synthetic, oxidized compound completely absent from nature.
Right. And the human body doesn't actually use folic acid, does it? It requires folate.
Correct. The body utilizes a biologically active form called 5-methyltetrahydrofolate.
Okay.
When you ingest synthetic folic acid, which, by the way, is mandated by law to be sprayed on processed grains in many countries.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. Your body has to process it through an enzyme called DHFR in the liver.
And human liver capacity for this specific conversion is shockingly low, right?
And very low.
Yeah.
So if you consume a massive bowl of enriched post-workout pasta, you flood the system with unmethylated folic acid.
Overwhelming the pathway.
Yes. It overwhelms the enzymatic pathway, and you end up with unmetabolized folic acid circulating in the blood, which actively binds to and blocks your folate receptors.
Wait, so it gets backed up. You essentially create a biochemical traffic jam.
That's exactly what happens.
You're blocking the cellular machinery from accessing the real nutrients it needs to facilitate repair, simply because you chose a chemically altered delivery vehicle for your carbohydrates.
Which is why the source points us exclusively toward non-fortified, highly pure carbohydrate matrices.
Right, like fruits ending in berry.
Yes, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries.
And why those specifically?
Because of their low glycemic load and incredibly high density of anthocyanins.
Which help mitigate the reactive oxygen species generated during intense exercise.
Exactly. And for denser starch requirements, it isolates non-fortified white rice, organically sourced whole wheat, sweet potatoes, and non-GMO corn.
I want to push on an extrapolation here, because if we consider how much standard sports nutrition relies on heavily processed, artificially enriched maltodextrin and synthetic vitamin sprays.
It's everywhere.
It is. And eradicating those from the post-workout window could be like revolutionary for the average listener.
Oh, completely.
Think about the standard post-workout crash, that brain fog and lethargy that hits 2 hours after the gym.
Everyone knows that feeling.
Right. And we usually blame it on central nervous system fatigue. But based on this, it's highly probable it's actually a severe glycemic excursion followed by an enzymatic blockade from all those synthetic fortifications.
It is a highly plausible theory. I mean, by utilizing the clean, non-GMO whole food sources outlined in the text, you ensure a steady, manageable insulin curve.
You supply the necessary glucose to replenish the hepatic and muscular glycogen stores.
Without introducing compounds that actively disrupt your methylation cycle.
You give the body exactly what it recognizes and nothing it has to fight.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've mapped the amino acids for structural repair, and we've analyzed the unfortified carbohydrates required to drive the glycogen replenishment.
Right.
But the cellular environment is still heavily inflamed. I mean, the mechanical stress has triggered an arachidonic acid cascade.
The alarm bells are ringing.
Yes. We need a biological mechanism to actively resolve that inflammation, which brings us to the inclusion of healthy fats.
Right. The transcript introduces a highly strategic use of lipids here. It carefully notes that fats are not the immediate priority for rapid glycogen resynthesis.
Okay, wait, I have to challenge this sequence, though.
Okay, go for it.
Because I am looking at the physiology here.
Yeah.
We just established that we want a rapid, unimpeded transit of amino acids and glucose into the bloodstream.
Right.
And we know that introducing dietary fat delays gastric emptying and slows down intestinal absorption.
It does.
So why are we intentionally introducing a metabolic speed bump into our post-workout protocol? Don't we want those nutrients hitting the cellular vacuum as rapidly as possible?
That's a great question. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the slight delay in gastric emptying is a calculated trade-off for systemic biochemical regulation.
Okay, how so?
Well, you are correct that fat slows digestion. However, when we consume those necessary complex carbohydrates, even unfortified ones, we initiate an insulin response.
Right.
A controlled insulin response is anabolic, but a runaway insulin spike is highly pro-inflammatory.
Ah, I see.
So by introducing a strategic, measured dose of healthy fats, you blunt the extreme edge of that glycemic excursion.
Oh, so it acts as a metabolic governor, preventing the insulin release from becoming too aggressive.
Exactly. But more importantly, we must look at the specific type of fats the source recommends. It is heavily biased toward omega-3 fatty acids.
Okay, why omega-3 specifically in this window?
Because during your workout, the microtrauma to your muscles triggers the release of arachidonic acid, which initiates the production of pro-inflammatory prostaglandins.
Right, the inflammation.
And this is necessary to signal the repair cruise. But you don't want that inflammatory fire burning indefinitely.
Obviously not.
Omega-3 fatty acids serve as the biological precursors to specialized pro-resolving mediators, specifically molecules known as resolvins, protectins, and meresins.
Wait, resolvins, so they don't just passively let the inflammation die down, they actively instruct the cellular machinery to halt the inflammatory cascade.
Exactly. They actively resolve it. They clear out the cellular debris. They are active signaling molecules that turn off the alarm bells once the initial repair phase has begun.
That is fascinating.
And the source identifies specific clean delivery vehicles for these omega-3s, small amounts of avocados, high-quality organic olive oil, raw nuts and seeds, and fatty fish.
So it's not advocating for massive, heavy fat consumption that will sit in your gut for 6 hours.
No, no. It's a surgical strike of specialized lipids to resolve the systemic stress and protect your neurological tissue.
Wow. Okay, so we have the structural proteins, the energetic carbohydrates, and the lipid coolants. But none of those macronutrients can be transported, synthesized, or utilized if the fluid dynamics of the body are compromised.
Right. The plumbing has to work.
Exactly. Which leads us to the element the transcript designates as the most critically overlooked factor in physical recovery.
Intracellular hydration and electrolyte replenishment.
Yes.
And the transcript leans on data from the Journal of Sports Sciences to validate that true hydration is never solely about the volume of plain water ingested.
It's not just about chugging gallons of water.
No, it is entirely dependent on the precise osmotic balance of trace minerals alongside that water.
This is where the source absolutely dismantles the commercial sports drink industry, and it is a phenomenal analysis.
It really goes after them.
Because we have been conditioned for decades to believe that neon-colored, heavily marketed liquids are the absolute pinnacle of recovery.
Yeah, the booze stuff.
But the text points out that these are predominantly chemical cocktails of artificial food dyes, artificial sweeteners that obliterate the gut microbiome.
And, as we discussed in the hook, cyanocobalamin.
Yes. Let's revisit that. Cyanocobalamin.
It is the perfect representation of everything wrong with commercial sports nutrition.
Because it's literally just marketing, right?
Exactly. The manufacturer needs to list vitamin B12 on the label for marketing purposes, so they use the absolute cheapest, most stable synthetic form available.
And they attach the cobalamin molecule to a cyanide donor molecule.
Right. And as we established, your body literally has to deploy antioxidants to cleave off and detoxify the cyanide before it can even attempt to utilize a highly inferior form of B12.
So at the exact moment your body is desperate for life-giving cellular components, you are forcing it into a detoxification protocol.
It's biological sabotage.
It really is. So what is the transcript's alternative for establishing correct fluid dynamics? It points directly to raw mineral salts. Specifically, adding a pinch of Celtic sea salt or Baja Gold sea salt to your drinking water. But why those specific salts and not just, standard table salt?
Well, because standard iodized table salt is heavily processed sodium chloride, completely stripped of its surrounding nutrient profile.
It's just empty salt.
Basically, Celtic and Baja Gold sea salts are naturally occurring, unrefined mineral matrices. When you sweat, you don't just lose sodium. You lose potassium, magnesium, calcium, and trace chlorides.
Right.
These specific sea salts contain over 80 trace minerals in ratios that perfectly mimic human blood plasma.
So they restore the cellular voltage.
Yes.
Because the sodium-potassium pump, the Na plus K plus ATPase, which regulates the electrochemical gradient across every cell membrane in your body, cannot function on pure water alone.
No, it requires those trace minerals to pull the water from the interstitial fluid into the cell.
Without those trace minerals, you can drink a gallon of purified water and remain chronically dehydrated at the cellular level.
Completely. And the transcript also champions 100% pure coconut water, sourced from young coconuts, referring to it as nature's Gatorade.
And the biochemical profile of young coconut water is stunning. It yields roughly 16 grams of entirely natural, unrefined coconut sugar per serving.
Alongside a massive dose of naturally occurring potassium.
Right. But you highlighted a specific detail in the text regarding this that creates a fascinating metabolic loophole, specifically for individuals maintaining strict ketogenic diets.
Oh, yeah. The keto loophole. This is so cool.
Explain this, because it seems contradictory.
Well, ketogenesis requires strictly limiting carbohydrate intake, usually below 50 grams per day, to force the body to produce ketones for fuel.
Right.
Normally, drinking 16 grams of liquid sugar would instantly spike insulin, halt ketone production, and throw you right out of ketosis.
So why is it okay here?
However, the source notes that a strict keto-adapted individual can safely consume 2 to 3 pure coconut waters daily, provided they are consumed strictly in the immediate post-workout window.
Because of that contraction-mediated GLUT4 translocation we discussed at the very beginning.
Yes, the osmotic vacuum.
Wow.
Because the muscular glycogen stores have been so profoundly depleted, and the GLUT4 receptors are already resting on the surface of the cell membrane, the body can absorb that natural coconut sugar via an insulin-independent pathway.
That is incredible.
The muscles act as a massive biochemical sink, eagerly soaking up the glucose and potassium instantly to restore the cellular pressure.
Leaving virtually no residual sugar in the bloodstream to trigger an insulin spike and disrupt systemic ketosis.
Exactly. It is an incredibly elegant use of nutrient timing.
That is a phenomenal example of understanding the how rather than just memorizing the what.
For sure.
And for listeners who want to bypass the commercial options entirely, the source provides a flawless, highly bioavailable homemade electrolyte matrix.
Yeah, let's hear the recipe.
It's pure water, a pinch of that high-quality Baja Gold or Celtic sea salt, a squeeze of fresh lemon, and a teaspoon of raw honey.
It covers every biological requirement.
Right. The water provides the solvent. The sea salt delivers the full spectrum of trace minerals to power the cellular pumps.
And the lemon provides a hit of natural vitamin C to combat oxidative stress.
And the specific glucose to fructose ratio in raw honey acts as a transport mechanism, expediting the absorption of the fluids across the gut lining.
It's perfect.
So we have assembled the complete physiological toolkit. We have the free-form amino acids, the unfortified carbohydrates, the omega-3 lipid mediators, and the mineral-rich fluid matrix.
The whole package.
The final and arguably most critical variable is the temporal application. Like, when does all of this need to happen?
Right. And this brings us to the biological concept of the anabolic window.
Oh, the famous anabolic window.
The transcript is uncompromising on this metric. The post-workout nutritional protocol must be initiated within 70 to 45 minutes and absolutely must be concluded no later than 2 hours post-exercise.
Now, I know the anabolic window has been debated endlessly in fitness circles, right? With some modern studies suggesting total daily protein intake matters more than immediate timing.
Yeah, there's a lot of debate.
So why is this source so deeply entrenched in this specific 45-minute ticking clock?
Because while total daily protein dictates long-term tissue maintenance, the efficiency of the nutrient partitioning is radically heightened in that acute window.
The efficiency, okay.
We've been discussing the enzymatic upregulation, the machinery for glycogen synthase, and the mTOR pathways are hypersensitized immediately following mechanical stress.
So everything is primed.
Exactly. If you delay the nutrient delivery for 3 hours, the localized inflammatory signals begin to wane, the GLUT4 receptors retreat back inside the cell, and the metabolic doors close.
Wow.
The identical meal eaten 3 hours later will require a significantly higher insulin demand to process and has a much higher likelihood of being partitioned toward adipose tissue fat storage, rather than being shuttled directly into structural repair.
So you miss the peak enzymatic window, and the raw materials basically back up in the system.
Exactly.
To ensure we don't miss this window, the source outlines highly specific synergistic meal structures. So let's break down the biochemistry of these combinations. The baseline recommendation is grilled chicken, quinoa, and steamed vegetables.
This is your standard, clean-burning baseline. You've got highly bioavailable lean amino acids from the chicken.
Right.
Quinoa provides a complex, slow-digesting, unfortified carbohydrate with a complete amino acid profile of its own, stabilizing the glycemic response.
And the vegetables provide the necessary dietary fiber and micronutrients to support the gut microbiome during digestion.
Perfect baseline.
Now, meal 2 escalates the strategic pairing: salmon, sweet potato, and spinach.
This is a profound anti-inflammatory matrix. The salmon delivers a massive payload of omega-3s, EPA, and DHA to immediately begin synthesizing those resolvents we discussed to halt the arachidonic acid cascade.
And the sweet potato.
That's a low-glycemic, unfortified carbohydrate loaded with beta-carotene. And the spinach provides a dense source of intracellular magnesium to assist the sea salt in regulated muscle contractions and preventing cramping.
Brilliant. Now, meal 3 leans into the genetic nuances we uncovered. Raw A2, whole-fat Greek yogurt, a fistful of berries, and a teaspoon of honey.
The ultimate enzymatic bypass. You are utilizing the naturally occurring lactase in the raw dairy to aid digestion.
Avoiding the inflammatory BCM7 peptide by utilizing A2 beta-casein.
And flooding the system with those highly potent anthocyanin antioxidants from the dark berries to neutralize the reactive oxygen species generated by the workout.
And the honey provides the rapid transport simple sugars to pull the dairy proteins across the gut wall.
Exactly.
Meal 4 brings in the trace minerals aggressively. An egg omelet paired with lean meats, avocado, heavily sprinkled with Baja Gold sea salt, crushed black pepper, and crunchy arugula.
Right, so the cholesterol in the whole eggs is vital for synthesizing hormones like testosterone, which aid in the long-term anabolic response.
And the avocado provides monounsaturated fats for sustained clean energy.
Yep. The Baja Gold sea salt restores the trace mineral deficit, while the piperine in the crushed black pepper drastically enhances the bioavailability and absorption of all the surrounding nutrients.
Man, it really is a science. And for absolute liquid transit speed, Meal 5 is a specialized smoothie. A highly bioavailable protein isolate-like whey or a rigorously sourced plant matrix blended with banana, spinach, almond butter, and pure coconut milk.
That requires almost zero digestive effort, sliding right past the stomach and into the small intestine for immediate absorption.
Okay, so what does this all mean? We have meticulously deconstructed the biochemical mechanisms. We understand the enzymatic locks, the genetic dairy mutations, the methylation cycle disruptions from folic acid, and the precise fluid dynamics.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. But how do you, the listener, take this incredibly dense scientific framework and translate it into a permanent operational habit?
Well, the transcript actually distills this highly complex biology into a four-step behavioral master plan.
Okay, lay it on us.
Step 1 is the logistical foundation. Plan ahead.
Because the biology does not care about your schedule.
No, it doesn't.
If the GLUT4 receptors begin to retreat after 45 minutes, you cannot be wandering the grocery store aisles trying to decipher labels. The nutrients must be pre-staged and accessible the moment mechanical tension ceases.
Exactly. Step 2 is uncompromising high-quality sourcing. This entire protocol collapses if you introduce chemical imposters.
You must prioritize unfortified, non-GMO, minimally processed whole foods.
If you introduce synthetic folic acid or cyanocobalamin, you are actively initiating a secondary inflammatory response while your body is trying to heal from the first one.
You cannot build a structurally sound foundation with synthetic degraded materials.
Okay.
What's step 3?
Consistency. The enzymatic pathways we discussed, glycogen synthase, mTOR activation, they habituate to routine.
Oh, so they get better at it.
Yeah. If you consistently provide the exact required biochemicals in the precise temporal window, your body becomes incredibly efficient at partitioning those nutrients. The recovery curve accelerates over time.
You train the cellular machinery just like you train the physical muscle. I love that. And the final mandate.
Listen to your biological feedback. And this actually raises an important question regarding how we actually measure the efficacy of this protocol.
Right. How do you know if it's working?
The true metric of optimal post-workout nutrition is not merely the absence of hunger, it is the physiological state of your organism 4 to 6 hours later. If you have successfully navigated this protocol, you will not experience that profound systemic lethargy.
Your localized inflammation will be managed.
Your cognitive function will remain sharp because your methylation cycle isn't blocked.
And your delayed onset muscle soreness will be drastically reduced.
You essentially bypass the physiological hangover of exercise.
Okay, to rapidly synthesize the biology we've mapped today. The moment you cease physical training, your body enters a profound osmotic and structural deficit.
True.
To successfully transition from catabolic destruction to anabolic synthesis, you must intervene within a rigid 45-minute to 2-hour window.
Yes.
You must introduce highly bioavailable amino acids, potentially bypassing digestion entirely, or utilizing enzymatically active raw A2 dairy to stimulate the mTOR pathway.
Right.
You must refuel the cellular power grid with pure, unfortified complex carbohydrates, strictly avoiding the enzymatic blockade of synthetic folic acid.
Definitely.
You must introduce a surgical strike of omega-3 lipids to actively signal the end of the inflammatory cascade.
Yep.
And you must restore the electrochemical gradients with trace mineral sea salts and naturally occurring potassium matrices, entirely avoiding the toxic burden of commercial sports drinks.
It is a precise, unapologetic biological operation. Every variable matters.
By shifting your paradigm from simply consuming calories because I burn calories to strategically resourcing a highly complex, time-sensitive biochemical repair protocol, you guarantee that the physiological trauma you endure in the gym actually translates to the structural and metabolic adaptations you demand.
And based on the depth of the cellular mechanisms we've explored today, I think there's a profound, lingering question for everyone listening.
Let's hear it.
If our biological machinery is truly this hypersensitive, if introducing a synthetic vitamin B12 molecule or a fortified grain can completely derail our cellular repair and cause systemic traffic jams,
Yeah.
how much the chronic fatigue, the inexplicable brain fog, and the persistent low-grade inflammation we experience daily is simply the result of us ignoring these precise biological windows and feeding our bodies chemical imposters.
Wow. That is a fundamental paradigm shift right there.
It really makes you think.
It does. The next time you finish a grueling physical session and you catch that fleeting, pumped reflection in the mirror, remember that it is merely an illusion of progress. The physical destruction is over, but the most sophisticated, critical biochemical work your body will execute all day is just beginning.
Make sure you're giving it the right tools.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.